from Prague, recovered from the jet lag.
Indeed.
Mostly. It took me days, even like Thursday. I mean, I got back Saturday and then just have been busy ever since. And Thursday, it was like I'm waking up at 4 a.m. and by mid-afternoon, I'm just like dizzily tired and like, what is going on? But anyway, I'm getting back in the groove.
Yeah, takes a minute, dude. Like going right back into fiat world after something like that is just it's a swift kick in the balls, dude. Like it's like I remember the last 2 times I went to Prague, like I had to go, hey, what's up, Johnny? Good to see you, sir. But last 2 times I got back from Prague, I was right back in the fiat land, and it just sucked ass, dude. Like all that, like you get like your gas tank is just full of like good vibes and signal, and then it's just like
well, just some of the little stuff, like even the most innocuous little work task email or something that is absolutely easy to attend to and move on from, and then multiply that by like a couple hundred, and it's just like, it's a completely divorced world from the world we emerged from, and then it's back to digging for salt. And I can appreciate my job at one level that it lends me a kind of flexibility to think and explore where I can, but there's no getting away from the fact that I have to shut that off and not think about it, lest it be too painful, and then just lean in and be like, oh yeah, I have to do this report for the court or the state or for the whatever. And it's like, this is not life.
Right. Exactly. It's just like super.
This is the opposite of my life.
Yeah. Right. Well, I'm super glad you got to go, dude. Like,
dude, I was telling Robin, we were on with Robin earlier as he's working on the podcast.
Yeah, my podcast
there, which we're
going to drop tomorrow. Yeah,
tomorrow, which is awesome. Yeah, he interviewed quite a few people while in Prague, and hard to describe all the things, but how amazing it was. And then like the first conference I went to like was more than I expected. Like, I came from that rejuvenated new purpose, feeling like leaning in, pushing, and like, I'm feeling all this stuff. I get it. And then other conferences, they kind of remind me. And then you get to a point where like, no, I get it. No, it's cool. Yeah, I get it. I've been to conferences. It's cool. And there's people there. Something about Prague was just different. It was so different than Vegas, for example. It has grown from last year, apparently. I mean, you would know better, but it grew. Martin was telling us how it has grown significantly. And being there for a good reason, just it attracts some of the best minds in the space that go all the way to Prague for very deliberately. It kind of captures a lot of Europe and that European sentiment. It's that Eastern Europe, the history of Czechia and all that. Just they've been through both Nazi and communist shit, and so they have this deep, fierce, independent sort of mindset, I guess you might say. And perspective on things, money, banking, economies, governments, and it hits. And so people that were there just on par were based, or like in Portland, there was a lot of people there to like learn, and they're new, and a variety. Vegas, there's a lot of fiat and people that are like, what's self-custody, or, I got this thing. I've got a thing on top of Bitcoin, or, I love Bitcoin, but I also like shitcoins. So, okay. But Prague just did it all really well. Like it was all very good signal.
Yeah. Yeah, dude. It's a next level conference, man. It's really hard to convey because like the first time I went, I was like, oh my God, dude, like my mind was blown, right? Like, and compared to like Miami, it was just like, there was no comparison, Yeah. But trying to explain that to somebody without, it's like trying to explain flying, like what it's like to be in an airplane. It's just kind of like, well, you're like sitting. So it's like sitting in your living room. Well, no, because it's kind of like it's just different, right? Like there's just there's like all the little details and nuances and all the little things that have happened around you and the conversations you hear and the people you're around and everything like that. Like it adds up to something where you're just like, this is not like wandering around Vegas and, with the spectacle and dancing cows and fucking wizard hats and all that weird shit. It's very, very different,
Yeah. It'd be like, oh, I've been on a lot of commercial flights. Like I'm cool with flying. Flying's cool. And then you get in the cockpit with Sean Clark and his new sports model, and you're like,
never.
Whoa, you can fly. Yeah. This is flying.
Yeah. I will not get in the tail dragger with any human being, like let alone a beginner pilot. Like that's just not going to happen, dude. Like I don't know. My dad actually crashed a tail dragger like towards the end of his flying career, and they're super easy to ground loop. That particular aircraft he's flying, like I'm stoked that he got it. I'm really happy for the guy. Like it sounds like it's something he's been really thinking about for a long, long time. But hey, sweet Biddy, how's it going? But that type of aircraft is squirrely, to put it mildly. I mean, he talks about it a lot. He's like, this thing is kind of unforgiving, and they really are. You can get in over your head really fast. And just putting all that together, like I've known amateur pilots throughout the years, and I've flown with a couple of them. And it was after my last buddy that was a helicopter pilot, he took me up, and I was like, I'm not doing this ever again. Like,
oh man,
I'm flying commercial or I'm not flying, because it's just it's dangerous.
Helicopter mishaps just happen. It's like,
yeah, dude.
Anyway, the moving parts there and the nature of that flight.
Brock was amazing, sweet Biddy. We were just talking about it.
Oh my goodness!
Off on a tangent there, but
and I'm not usually, as a humble pleb, I'm like, just the basic ticket. I mean, you basically convinced me, hey, you gotta get the VIP ticket to have access to the upstairs and to hang out, rub shoulders, the other extra stage they had there and everything else. And you're sitting in the first or second row in a small group relatively. And there's Sailor, at a couple arms reach, and so many others. So many other great speakers there. Yeah. It's intimate. You're close. The mindset of everybody there too. It's just so very accessible. So that you got these people that you almost kind of hero worship or have over the years, and then there they are, and there's not like a scrum around them or security saying you can't get anywhere here. They're kind of just like, okay, you have this ticket, like we're kind of like legit. And so like, yeah, you can actually approach these people and have conversations, and it reinforced that, like, I like them. Whether I agree or disagree on details, whatever, I like these people. It's hard to explain entirely. And then the juxtaposition between Sailor's talk, which I really find fascinating and can appreciate. Sailor being Sailor, that a couple of talks he had, I find fascinating to view from a distance and just sort of see where he's looking at the landscape. Followed up on his main stage talk with Tony Yazbek with the Bitcoin Way, where it was like, Tony's basically like,
everything that guy said
on Bitcoin. Yeah. They are there to steal your Bitcoin.
Yeah, exactly.
And he might as well just have called Sailor out, because it was, and right after Sailor's talk, and distill it down into like in one little sentence, and it's like sort of like, Bitcoin is not money. Bitcoin is capital. The money will be the things that I make on Bitcoin, which you will all use as money, and that'll be the money. But Bitcoin is the capital on which the powers sit on.
Yeah.
And then Tony's like, it's important that we use Bitcoin as money. That's the whole point. And these two separate worlds are like, wow, this is getting to the heart of the discussion of our future and what it all means. So
yeah, kind of. I think, I mean, as you know, I wrote that book about what money is, right? And when people talk about it, I don't think people have a real sound grasp of what money is. And until someone has like a really sound grasp of what money is, to have someone say something is or is not money, I think is problematic, right? And Saylor started touching on that in his big speech on the main stage. He was like, if you ask an Austrian, like an Austrian economist, they will say, well, this is money because of these reasons and yada yada yada. But then he very quickly pivoted and said, well, but everybody else on planet Earth looks at money like this. And then he proceeded to roll out slide after slide after slide about all the complexity that is inherent in a modern stable monetary system, right? And it's not just like the ability to buy cocaine online. It's not about the ability to buy a coffee with sats. It's not about, like those are end user, very, very limited cases for what money actually is. And so when someone says Bitcoin can do everything money can do, I go, no, it can't, dude. Like it just can't. It cannot coordinate obligations at scale the same way as like a fiat dollar can, right? And the machinations that are going on underneath the hood are just like way too complex for people to really grok, I think. Like I don't think there's probably a handful of human beings on planet Earth that can actually view the entire corpus of the global monetary order and go, yeah, I get what all this is doing, right? I think people latch on to the things that they use or are most familiar with, and then they just assume that's what all money is. And it's like, it just doesn't add up or work, So
Saylor is looking at a very broad, zoomed out perspective of what money is. And he was pretty good about defining his terms in there about where we, what we'll use the word money, and then he'll say, oh, money in the conventional sense. I'm referring to capital here. And like there was one slide I took a picture of here, and it was like, and it kind of broke down of, oh, come on, there we go. Like the role of people that play in this space, savers and investors and innovators, capital versus credit versus, say, money, and what those are. Of course, he's looking at the strategy oriented asset of what those are. But most people, they think of money and they're thinking of their own checking account, savings account, buying stuff, maybe having bills or having credit. Yeah. And like small level family checkbook stuff. Right. He is looking at money in terms of this systemic facilitation of everything, which is like what you've written about.
Yeah.
But
well, anyway. That's the point, though, is like that's what money is. Like when someone says money is, buying bread at the grocery store, go, that's like one little tiny tranche of what money does. But it's like the most meaningless tranche of monetary orders, right? And the thing is you are obligated to the state, period, full stop. Every human being on planet Earth is obligated to the state in some level, unless you live in a hunter-gatherer tribe in the Amazonian rainforest and they just kind of leave you alone. But that's by choice. They don't have to, they just do. But unless you're one of those people, you are legible to the state and you are obligated to the state. From the day you take your first breath to the day you breathe your last breath, you owe to the state and they demand it from you. And, like if you ask somebody, like, why do you go to work? They go, well, I have to. Why? Well, because I got to pay for bills and I got to buy food, blah, blah, blah. So then someone will say in the same breath, yeah, but this is capitalism. It's voluntary. And I go, didn't you just say you had to go to work? Like, I didn't hear the part where that was optional, and somehow they can weave that together in their head and make it make sense to them. But they're two very conflicting ideas. I'm free, but I have to go do something. You go, well, then you're not free. If you are compelled to go do something, like go to a job that you hate, that doesn't mean you're free. That means you're compelled to go do something. You have an obligation to the state and you need to satisfy that obligation. And the way you satisfy that obligation is by collecting their little fucking tokens. And then you got to give them back to the state to prove that you contributed somehow. Right. And so that's at base level, that's what money is coordinating, your obligations to the state. It's not coordinating your ability to trade. Like nobody would work and nobody would trade if you didn't have to collect state units, because I have 250,000 years of human history where nobody worked or traded. They just did shit for themselves and they lived and they were fine. It wasn't until the state came along and said, hey, you have to give us stuff. You owe me. And once they said, you owe me, the way they manage those obligations is through things that become money. If you give it 5,000 years of coordinating obligations, what emerges from that is money, what we think of as money. But what it's coordinating under the hood is far deeper than, you showing up and punching a clock and collecting, state units and then spending state units and then giving other people state units. But there were no like trading networks, in just post Ice Age anywhere, right? Like there's the Gravitian exchange networks. Those people were like trading tools and shit like that. But that wasn't like commercial trade where they're trying to make a profit. Because the only reason to make a profit is so you can pay your due to the state. Like otherwise, what do you need profit for, right? If you can just go pluck fruit off the tree and kill an animal and live in a hut, like what the hell do you care about any of this stuff? During the colonial period, when the European nations went down to Africa and started colonizing all over the place, first thing they did was impose a tax. And then the only way you could get your tax is to go work for the companies that needed laborers. Before that, they didn't pay any taxes. They weren't sitting around going like, oh, well, I owe, 10 shillings a year for my hut. They just built a hut. They lived there. They grew whatever they grew and they shot whatever they shot and they ate whatever they ate and they were doing just fine. And, it wasn't until someone came along and said, you guys need to make markets and do all this shit that they started dealing in currencies and monies and all that. All those logics show up with state administration, not absent it, so.
I had a very interesting philosophical conversation with my son when I picked him up at after school shortly after I landed from Prague, and he'd graduated. He's got a bachelor's degree now, and he's going off to be a mountain guide for the summer, and then wants to get a master's. But anyway, he's a very deep thinker and really smart in engineering and then philosophically. But what school did to him was really indoctrinate a lot of, even from the get-go in engineering school, it was a lot of socialist, borderline communist ideals. Like basically, hey kids, you're going to learn all this smart stuff. You're going to go change the world. What world do you want to have? And go out there and change the world for these ideals. What are these ideals? Well, they're kind of all the hopeful, youthful, ideological ones you can imagine that we can't afford. But that said, I mean, the values are in there. But he was talking, he's like, okay, doesn't like things about fascism or say the state, you might say, or groups that have control, freakish, or fascist ideals or approaches. And I was like, okay, so sort of like the quote, there is no red, there is no blue, there's the state and there's you. It's like, what is an entity that is not inclined in these directions that we don't like? Let's just use the word fascism. Like people use that word and it can mean a lot of different things. And
well, right now it means you don't agree with me. That's all fascism.
Yeah. It's really, it's like money. It's sort of like, well, fascist. It's like, okay, are you talking right wing, left wing, upwards, downwards? What people basically just don't like this sort of, it's like whatever they don't like, but it's often like some power that would push control or propaganda and other things. What is a group that isn't that way or isn't inclined to eventually just become that? Like you throw down the state and you build a new one and now it's just the new fascism. And where did it start? And he was thinking about it, and basically the conclusion we both have, but he was like, and he's written about this himself in his own ways. He's like, well, basically I think it started with agriculture. And I was like, wow, I'm amazed you're thinking about it that way. And even our frame of thinking, going back to the way we might have communicated as smart animals way, way, way back, whatever. And we evolved language, and language started creating frames around thought processes and how we communicate and manage and share thoughts or ideas. And all of these sort of things getting meta here about it. Language and then agriculture, and now our brains just think completely in this, I just call it Plato's cave. It's like we live in this Plato's cave, and Bitcoin in a way helps you see this glimmer out there, and as you seek it and pursue the work and expand those directions, It's like there is an outside, or is there an outside that we can really live in?
No.
Is there something fundamental out there that we can achieve and escape from the cave? Part of me is like, I'm thinking there is perhaps no real complete escape. You can kind of hover at the edge and know that it's there and live part of your life there, but ultimately we're all intractably leashed to the cave still.
Well, I mean,
like money.
Well, like Amazon rainforest, there's a bunch of people that are essentially illegible to the state. I think they're censused nowadays, but they don't owe taxes. They don't have to, like, they live the same way humans have lived on this planet for 500,000 years, right? They go out, they gather, they weave baskets, they just kind of hang out, they make babies once in a while, and they just kind of live, and they live in nature, and they live as part of nature, and they're not apart from nature, right? And so your son's observation is actually pretty telling, because it's the thing that agriculture does is it fixes you in place and it makes you dependent on a resource node, right? And so once you're dependent on something for your food, you have to tend it, right? And if there's enough people going around doing this, like, you have to coordinate everybody to make sure that works. Full stop. Like, I don't care if it's a hippie commune farm. I don't care if it's your house and your garden, or if it's, a Mesopotamian state with 25,000 people in it. All of them share the same burden. You have to obligate people to do tasks. Like, that's the only way that setup works. Like, you can't run a communal farm and not have people taking care of the farm, or else the farm fails, right? Like, because it's not a natural thing. It's a modification of natural processes. So you don't have to tend the jungle, right? Like, the jungle just exists. So there's no obligations to, like, well, Tom, you need to go beat back the weeds, and Sue, you need to cut down that tree, and Fred, you need to go gather bananas, and Sue, you need to go fishing. It's just like, no, you just go grab that stuff as needed, depending on what your mood is that day, right? And maybe you dry a little bit to save for later or whatever, but you're not really, like, no one has to guard the perimeter. No one has to guard the stores. Nobody, there's no roles, there's no tasks, there's no obligations. But the second you settle down and start planning food, all those things show up, and then you become a target for people to predate upon you and take things from you. So then you have new roles, and you need more coordination. And there's bigger and broader obligations. And so the way they did that in the past was, like, the Mesopotamian states would just go around, find people out in the wherever they were, and just steal them and then force them into slavery, right? And so that, when you talk about the birth of language, like, there's spoken language, but the first written language was not about, like, poems to the gods. It was, the first written language was like ledgers going, well, this is what grain means as a symbol. This is what oil means as a symbol. This is what you owe means as a symbol. And so, when you start talking about language, the birth of language, you're really talking about, like, the birth of obligations and the logic that becomes money 2,000 or 3,000 years later, So it's a really fascinating journey, because all of these things arrive together and they develop together. Like, agriculture arrives with the state as part of the state, and the coordinations and obligations and the money and the language and all that kind of stuff arrives with the state. It's not like something that was just floating around in the world, and these were all abstract concepts that all came together under the banner of the state. Like, these are part and parcel of developing the state. So when someone says, hey, I want to get outside the state, you go, you're trying to get outside of human development for 10,000 years. There's no outside to that, unless you go and join some Amazonian rainforest tribe, and if they accept you and you don't die in the first year from starving or disease, or you didn't bring your CPAP or whatever, you got nowhere to plug it in, like, if you can sort of deal with that, then guess what, you're outside. But that's the only path. There's no other, like, oh, I'm going to exist in the state system, operate within state boundaries, be obligated to the state, legible to the state, but I'm going to be free somehow, free from the state at the same time. It's like, it's like a nonsensical proposition,
Yeah, I think we have that hunger and desire to get back to something that feels sovereign, free, natural. There's, like, and we fulfill that need in various ways in our fiat life. We go out and do things and connect with nature, or try to do things. but to actually have something sustainable that is authentically that is so foreign to what we're used to thinking about, is differently sustainable than, say, the world we live in now, or the density of populations we have in areas now. It's so different. It's hard to get your mind around. Let's say there is a community that has that, you like deep in the Amazon rainforest somewhere, and they have that. I think of like Guns, Germs, and Steel in terms of like this interface with this giant outside world that maybe is just geographically separated, so there's a cushion, but these originating type communities living with and as a community off the land and with the earth, they're just very vulnerable to external influences. Like all you have to do, you go in and you've got like a plastic bag or a knife or something, a steel pot, and it's like, woo! So it's just simply a minor little upgrade. And so what's a steel pot? Little function, like, oh, they all want it. Oh, cool. Yeah, we can use this. Great. And then, but that's just the beginning. Yeah. And so what we're going through now is like, we've been through the fire of fiat, and then we want to get back to what theoretically what it has a balance, what is sustainable and natural. But like, it's just not possible to really fully do that. We can get closer and certainly do things that are much for the better. But the communities that are really doing that authentically, I just think they're vulnerable to just external contact, basically, because they don't have the defenses. They don't fully understand it or know it or have the words for it, or would naively be loving about it and say, "Oh, welcome," and then next thing you know, alcohol hits them harder than you might expect, or whatever. Just right. The things. So.
Well, I mean, most of these tribes exist today at the pleasure of the state. The state goes, well, we'll protect them.
Just leave them alone or whatever.
Yeah, like, so they're essentially like in game preserves, right? Like they're
yeah.
You know what I mean? Like at best. And you can see all through the Amazonian rainforest, like those people are getting squeezed every single day because they're doing slash and burn farming, and they're, eradicating land for livestock and all kinds of shit. So their habitat is shrinking, right? And if the state gets to a place where it decides that it wants the land they're on and it needs it for some state thing, there's nothing on planet Earth that's going to stop the state from going in there and doing that. So it doesn't matter if people chain themselves to trees. It doesn't matter if people go and do fundraisers and, save the Amazonian tribe of the ding dong hoodoos or whatever. Like, they're just going to get subsumed into the state. Their land is going to disappear, and they're either going to die or incorporate. Period. Full stop. There's nothing on planet Earth that's going to stop them. So even they are subject to state authority. It's just right now states tend to go, well, we'll leave them alone because it's kind of neat. Like, it's neat that humans still live that way, so we won't upset that. But it's the same thing as going like Bengal tigers are kind of neat, so we should preserve their habitat as best we can. But just like the Bengal tiger, if that land becomes valuable enough, someone's going to come in there and gobble it up, right? So, yeah. So it's a political situation, right? It's one of those things where it's the politics determine a lot of these outcomes. So there's no mechanical fix for this, right? Like, there's not like a new rule that you can impose and just go, okay, everything's fixed now, because there's always going to be some sort of competing thing. There's always going to be some way to wiggle around. So there's, like I say in the book, there's many insides. There's a lot of insides you can go to, but there's no outsides. There's no like stable, plausible outside to anywhere on planet Earth anymore. I mean, there's just nowhere you can go and escape. It's almost easier to be like a bum out on the street. Like, if you're just a homeless guy that's just criddling along, like, you're freer than every single laborer in the country because you're not obligated. You've just shunned all your obligations. And it's kind of a rugged life, and you might get knifed up in the night so someone can steal your shoes, but up until that point, you're free. Like, you don't have to go to a job every day. You just get to hang out and forage for food, and you kind of live more natural life than than some guy who's punching a clock 9 to 5, or, you know, showing up at his shop so he can trade goods for, you know, his what he owes to the state, right? So
Yeah, my college grad boy, you know, he's grappling with these feelings of, you know, so you get a degree, he's good at the academics, he knows the math, he can build the stuff, he knows hardware, software, electronics and things. And it's like, well, but it's not like he came up with some new idea or a product or an innovator where he's going to go make his own thing and start his own innovative business.
right.
It's sort of more like, which is, you know, I mean, you know, that's a special thing to come upon and work on, figure out. But he's faced with, okay, well, I can go work for a company, and that the nature of that work, nice and comfortable or productive, good feeling working as it may be, it's a lifestyle. It's like a shift into adulthood where it's like, well, what is that? Is this a career? It's the hustle. It's the, you know, you're plugged in to a system of things, building things, and that can be great. It can also be a job, you know, of course. I mean, they pay you for your time and your mind. So what he does in the summer, he goes up to Alaska and does mountain guiding work and just is like damn near off the grid. Like you only have so much power because it's all off solar panels. They're like 6 hours from Anchorage, way up in near glaciers and in the mountains, and they do mountain guiding and they're off grid, and there's not even hardly cell service, or if you do have it, your phone can only charge so much in a day off a solar panel. Anyway, but he loves that because he feels this connection to nature and the type of people living interfaced that far out, and thinks about life itself and all the things. It's like, on one hand, it's like, here's Edward Abbey, and on the other hand, staring you in the face is the job prospect, which is to build the dam. And I think he's like, I'm not sure what to do with my life because my ideals and what awakens my spirit is not necessarily working for a company.
Right.
But then it's like, but then you want to move on in life and have options and opportunities and retire or whatever, is to plug in. So I think I'm not trying to be too prescriptive to him or anything, just be supportive and say, you know, yeah, think about it this summer. What do you want to do? Which way, Western man? And he is not sure, but I totally get it. And so at a broad level, like humans today, I think there's this, you know, filling that deep need, seeing the problems in the world, wanting to get authentic and closer to something real. And in the face of AI, like human connection, you know, fight the loneliness, or not just have a world that's virtual or plugged. Okay, what's the alternative? Or is there a balance? But there is no real complete escape. Even as a mountain guide, they just rely on roads and a monthly trip to Anchorage to supply. Yeah. It's not like, I asked him, I said, can people out there just live? Is there enough hunting you can do, or enough fishing you could do, or gathering of things if you knew enough about it to live with the people that are there? And it's like, not really, honestly. Yeah. I mean, you could just subsist, but you're kind of on the precipice of a fuck up.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
If you did that.
Always. So, well, that's sort of the thing, right? Like if you just said, son, here's a house, you know, kind of out in the wilds of Oregon, and here's a book on, you know, like polycropping and gardening, and here's a couple of solar panels, like basically everything you need to live a quality life. You've got some animals, you got some food growing, you've got a stable structure, you got land that you own outright. What's the likelihood any human being chooses to go commute to an office if that's already in place? I go, you'd almost have to be crazy, I think, right? You go like, well, everything I need is right here. So then people start looking, because I think we've been bred and trained and, you know, like similar to like the way they bred aggression out of dogs or whatever, wolves. I think a lot of that sort of stuff has been bred out of humans, right? Like just the ability to exist in that sort of natural area. What's up, 88 Sats? Hey, it was great to meet you as well, man. But I think, if you're if you have the means to survive outside the system, why would you ever participate in the system? And the only reason to participate in the system is so you can climb further up in the system. But so if you're motivated towards climbing in the system, then there's zero chance you're ever going to escape the system. But if you're comfy just kind of living outside of it, then the only things you really have to worry about are like getting injured or loneliness, right? Because you're probably not going to be socialized very well, because most people that are self-sustaining, self-sufficient, living off grid out in the middle of nowhere don't have a community that they're hanging out with regularly, because it's not like the farming days, like either you're connected or you're not, right? And if you're not connected, it's difficult to coordinate anything. If you are connected, then you're part of the system. So you're kind of, that's what I'm talking about when I say there's no real outside to this. You can choose it, but most people don't for some reason. I think because there's so many perks that come with the system. And yeah, you're right, Johnny. Like, at what level do you want to engage? At what level do you want to be beholden to the state? Like you can set up your life. Like your son Fritz is in a great position right now. He could set up his entire life where he never has to work a day in his life. Work for someone else so he can pay his obligations to the state. If he's living off grid, doesn't have an income, growing most of his own food, and isn't really like doing anything crazy where he needs to buy a fucking tractor or something like that, or a bunch of replacement parts, or he wants to get his Amazon delivered, or whatever convenience the modern world gives him. If he's willing to forego all that stuff, he can live basically about as outside the system as you can get, but the more you want to enjoy the trappings of fiat life, the more you have to participate in fiat life. There's no escape from it. You don't get an iPhone and a new laptop every year and a fancy car and air conditioning and all this kind of stuff if you're truly self-sufficient off grid. Like, those things are incompatible. So either you need to participate in the system so you can save the resources so you can go acquire that, or you go hard out and build it up over time, which is hard. People just don't want to live that way. They don't want to shit in a hole. They don't want to like compost their poop. They don't want to like spend the time to clear the land and start growing their own food. Like, they can't exist that way. They're too uncomfortable. They're too bred to be part of the system. So they just keep coming back to the system. Best I can tell.
Yeah. I'm proud of him for pursuing these adventures and learning the kind of life skills that force him. He told me, like, your incentives and your goals are like both planning ahead, but also managing the day to day in that plan with like capitalizing on your time in the day and what you're doing, day to day, week to week, season by season, where like winter's coming. So get that, have your wood ready and together, and the growing season is short. Like Alaska offers this land resource where people can have the space and the means to do that way, with the trade-off of this short growing season and daylight season. And then what do you do when you get old? So, okay, you've acclimated to this lifestyle. They rely on a community, a kind of a tight, vibing, smaller community where people share and get along and collaborate on aspects of tasks that they culminate into a cohesive livelihood. And so then you better damn have that if you're getting older and you can't stack or split or collect firewood when you're older. It's like getting old in that environment is a different prospect. You get injured or sick or something, and that may just be it. Like, that's life. You're
right.
Or you're very much reliable on people to help you. And if they can't or won't,
you're boned.
That's it. Sorry. Yeah. You're not doing it. And so, you're hungry, you're cold, you froze. But anyway, he's dipping his toes into this world. This is the second summer he's done it, and he loves it. So he comes out of that with this deep immersed experience from that. And then he plugs back into school where he's, building robots and stuff. And then looking at, NVIDIA and Intel and these other companies are hiring straight out And yeah, well, it'll be interesting to see what he wants to do, or if he can reconcile those worlds. Some people, you plug in, but you have the wherewithal to escape and tap back in and stay based. Because going off grid is a real lifelong commitment, and a different world. And like, I just wouldn't see him.
Yeah.
He'd be like gone.
I mean, you could just go up, right? But
it'd be like planning ahead to really see him. But like, just the willy-nilly FaceTime video is not not the same deal.
Right. So yeah, I mean, it's like, so when people talk about fiat collapsing or this or that or the other sort of fantastical idea, I just go, man, you don't get what that world looks like, and they compare it to like Venezuela or some ding dong third world country and go, well, it happened here. And it's like, well, that's not the United States. That's not the Eurozone. Those are very different entities that are managing obligations on a very different level, right? So just because Argentina can't manage its internal finances, but a lot of that's got to do with outside influence, like from hedge funds and sovereigns and the IMF and all kinds of crazy shit that comes down there, and the oil companies and whatever, like all those different obligations are difficult to manage for a sub-sovereign type, a beholden nation, right? But if you're in the United States of America, you don't have those same problems, and the way you can navigate like debt and all this kind of stuff is a very different thing. But that's why I'm always sort of, or not always, but especially lately, pushing back on this idea of like what money is. And like as Johnny said earlier, it's like it's the deepest question that's ever been asked, and I don't think anyone's answered it yet. Like that no one's really tackled it, and I'm doing my level best to tackle that question. But even what I'm coming up with is a best guess based on a really, really deep, intertwined, complicated history, But I am very much convinced that the people that think they've got money all figured out because they studied Austrian economics for a semester or something like that, or they think they've got it all figured out because they read a book on MMT, or they think they've got it all figured out because they read Mitchell Hines or whatever, I go, you have no fucking idea what you're talking about. Ultimately, like you're basing a bunch of ideas on a bunch of assumptions made by someone 120 or 130 years ago that himself was making a bunch of assumptions based on shit, and with really, really limited evidentiary basis. So they just go, well, I think this, and therefore I put that out in the world, and then enough people believed it, and that's, it's the founding origin myths, but none of them are comprehensive. And so when someone comes along and says, I definitively understand money, I go, you have no, I can say almost with 100% certainty, they have a very, very limited slice of a view. So it's problematic to start saying things like Bitcoin is money and it's going to change, this and that and the other thing. Bitcoin is a phenomenal, unbelievable, transformative technology in the history of mankind, but as property, as Michael Saylor would call it, as capital. I don't quite agree with that framing, but I can see why he would frame it that way because he's dealing with capital. But me as a person, I go, well, that's a property right that I can enjoy without state interference. And that is unprecedented. But to me, I look at it and go, that's enough. Like, you don't need to buy every fucking coffee with a goddamn Satoshi to make Bitcoin the most important thing you could possibly own in your lifetime, and probably for many lifetimes to come, you see? So I don't see the conflict there, but people get kind of bent out of shape if you even tease the idea that, hey, maybe, just maybe, what you think about money isn't right,
Here's you listening to Saylor in the arguments. I thought that was funny. Took a funny picture. There's Robin saw us and was laughing about it. Anyway, that was just a funny picture we did.
Yeah,
like there were so many Saylor fanboys, like just like got to get up there, got to get their picture, their selfie, and like I was here. Oh, Saylor.
Yeah,
and I guess we've got kind of a zoomed out perspective on it. Like we can appreciate Saylor, we can appreciate Tony. I get enthused and excited with Tony. With Saylor, my cerebral brain gets cranking like, oh man, that's just fascinating, but grappling with it all, it's just so it's interesting. Yeah. But thinking of, European trip generally, like we went to Vienna for a good week, hung out with Robin, saw Vienna, the history, and then Prague and Slovakia for a day.
Yeah.
Seeing the countries, just the differences.
Yeah.
The kinds of stuff I get used to in cities here in the States where it's like, I'm like, where are all the homeless people in the tents and the people crashed out and drugged out and laying on the sidewalk or
They're in Paris.
acting weird? Where are they? They're not around. And it's sort of like, yeah, well, I guess one, there's like maybe places for them to go. Two, the police would be on it, or people generally, just culturally, it's like, you don't do that.
Yeah, this is not what we do here. Yeah.
You don't do that. People were sort of more dressed up, made up. If you're going outside, you're not wearing your Crocs and pajamas. Culturally, it was just an upgrade.
Yeah.
I would say in lieu of homeless people crashed out and nobody knows what to do about it and leaves it alone or encourages it and feeds it, there was graffiti. So there's like
everywhere.
There was graffiti everywhere, and that was sort of tolerated or left alone as like, you know, those kids, they paint and scrawl and whatever. And some of it was artistic and some of it's just, most of it's just garbage.
Right.
But it's sort of like, okay, people aren't bothered by the graffiti. It's like up and coming wannabe Banksy stuff. So that was odd. It was kind of like, really? Like, here's a neat old cool building, old stone work or facade and stuff. And then as high as you can reach along the sidewalk is like graffiti downtown.
Scribbles,
like, okay, that's odd.
Yeah.
But I guess I would take that cultural fabric grit compared to a suffering human condition that people just have to step around.
Right.
And like Robin was saying, like, you fall asleep in your car and the police are like, you don't sleep in your car.
Yeah.
Like, you gotta
do here. Yeah.
You go somewhere.
Yeah.
That was interesting.
Yeah.
And the history, like one of the palaces we went to in Vienna, and I was looking up the history, and it was like Holy Roman Empire era, like built by Emperor Maximilian II. And we were talking about just the nature of what that land was before. And I mean, what was that, the 14 or 1500s.
Right.
And it's beautiful, but it was ancient. It was fiat, but it was old fiat.
Yeah.
What was this land before? There were people here. The reason he wanted that land is because there were these natural springs and this hillside and a view of the valley of Vienna and all this stuff. Beautiful. Somebody lived there, and he basically came in, and whoever was there, it's like, well, you're either dead or moved out, or you work for me now. But he just came in and had the army.
Right.
And now as a tourist site, we go there, oh, it's beautiful, and you can kind of appreciate or worship the history of it, but it's got its grit as well.
Oh, dude,
like,
yeah.
You know, these people took stuff because they could.
Yeah, exactly. Well, I mean, that's the whole history of agriculture, is like the second people started planting plants, the rest of it's been like people trying to figure out how to steal shit, you know, or take shit or get more shit or, you know, like build or whatever. I mean, there's, you know, like all these skyscrapers and all these crazy roads and all this kind of stuff didn't just come out of a fucking vacuum, right? Like this took thousands of years of evolution and change and fighting and conflict and force and, you know, the rule of law and all these different ideas that people have come to try and manage this great big unwieldy thing that we call life in a modern world, you know, life as fixed human beings. Like, it's completely anti to our nature. Like, it's just, you know, the agriculturists just basically outbred the hunter-gatherers. That's all. Like, it's not like it was a superior life. Working on a farm sucked balls. And there's a reason why they had to go get people and make them slaves to work on those farms to begin with, because it sucks. Like, it's hard work, like, and it's backbreaking work, right? So like, you know, when you're talking about that castle, I mean, that was just this massive grounds with those big, huge, like lion boob chicks and, you know, all those crazy statues and stuff.
Oh, that was another one too. Yeah.
A lot of,
yeah. There's so many pictures I could go through, but let me scroll through a few here that okay, yeah. Let's see here. This was up on the hill. There's Vienna down in the valley. I mean, really cool old architecture and stonework. We just, the number of statues was, there were, I counted just quickly in the main plaza what I could see. And these are like twice human size level gaudy statues of things. Um, there were at least 100 of those
Yeah.
all around. I was counting, and there were others off in the forest and around. And just the amount of work spent to say carve out one of those.
Right.
I mean, I don't know what that would take an artist, but I'm just thinking like months. I don't know. And there's like
Yeah.
hundreds of those things.
Right.
And so this is the Maximilian Palace we saw, and there's Vienna in the background. There was that, and then the other, and then was it later? Yeah, later that day we went to. Oh, here's an example of uh, some of the big statues. Anyway, I mean they're cool, arty, giant fountain there. So like, and then this place, I guess.
Yeah, but
Oh,
I mean,
wait,
if you think about that, that's like they built that entire place for a family to live there, right? And you go, well, like, so, but it's like if someone, I mean, just think about what Trump builds, right? And how he's able to do it. Or think about what any financier has built or what Elon Musk is building, or, like these people that are striving and grasping and trying to insulate themselves from state authority or become state authority or, play on a level playing field with state authority. None of them can overmatch the power of the state ultimately, right? Like, if the government wants to come and just ruin Tesla, they can do that. And if we got some sort of status government that came in and just kind of suspended the rule of law or suspended contract or something like that, like they could just evaporate that company. And, and I think people just underestimate what that looks like or sounds like or even contemplates what it is. But, but people routinely vaporize other people's businesses and their livelihoods and, there's all sorts of shenanigans going on. But I mean, if you think about the amount of shenanigans that had to go into just getting all the people coordinated to, as you said, make 100 statues, that's like non-trivial coordination game right there, let alone coordinate all the thousands of people it must have taken to bring in all that material and then cut it to shape and then assemble it and make sure it all works and make sure it stands. And like, that's just massive amounts of coordination at state compulsion at a time when this was not like you couldn't just drive your truck up to the site. Like they had to haul that shit with carts and float it in on a barge. And I mean, it's a crazy amount of coordination that occurs there. But people will take that for granted today, and they'll just walk around and go, look how pretty. It's like, do you understand what it took to do this? And then if you just magnify that to the entirety of the modern world and go, think about how much coordination is occurring right now. And then someone will come along and make some crazy statement like, oh, yeah, well, fiat's going to die. Like, well, if fiat dies, we all die. So, like, let's maybe pump the brakes on that narrative. I mean, it's fine to have the narrative. It doesn't, just like Bitcoin, it doesn't care what you think about it. The fiat system doesn't care what you think about it, and Bitcoin doesn't care what you think about it. So both are going to be there, whether you think it's a good idea, bad idea, whether you agree with the politics of it or not. But yeah, this, it's a far more complicated world than I think people give credit for.
These lions
really were stunning gardens. Surprisingly, overrun with weeds in spots, though. Like less well tended. Like the Slovakians in their gardens a little bit better, oddly enough.
Yeah, those lioness ladies were a trip, and sort of like with the cathedrals and other stuff, and these palaces. At one level, and I've seen this before, where back in the day, stuff was just built better. Kind of harkening off to like, what was that? A better time. It was proof of work and time preference and all this stuff. And it's like, it was just a different kind of fiat. Honestly, it was a very, very centralized version of imperial fiat.
Well, the problem with that whole narrative, because I see that a lot, and they go, "Oh, look at the amazing things the Europeans built versus what the Muslims built or something like that." It's like, what you don't see is what's not there, because all around that palace were a bunch of huts and mud dwellings and just shit. And the thing that made those structures so amazing was that labor was very, very cheap. Like you could get someone to come labor for you for almost free. Materials were very expensive. So if you're going to spend the time to get those materials, you're going to find laborers that can work those materials in a way where they can stack up and make shit like that, right? But modernly, it's the reverse. Labor is expensive and materials are dirt cheap. Like you can build a comparable structure to that in about 6 months with modern equipment, but the labor to do it is going to be very expensive. Navigating state authorities is going to be very expensive, but the materials that go into it are like relatively cheap for the cost of construction. So when you have these big monumental structures, like the entirety of Manhattan will stand just as long as any one of these structures, and they're going to be more sound, and they're going to require fewer modifications, because a lot of these things had to be like, they have to go and reinforce shit. Like if you look at the top of some of those spires, there's like wires bolted into the wall, because I'm sure one of those things fell down and probably nearly killed somebody or did kill somebody, and they went, oh, we should probably shore that up. Like all those facades right there that you see in the front are reinforced with steel cables and, you know, guidelines and shit like that, because they're fragile structures. But you know, they didn't know that then, right? They didn't have the kind of engineering understanding that we have today. So
yeah, for their time, they were just a marvel.
An
amazing achievement of what, you know, sticks creating scaffolding and what rope they had, I guess. So
right.
Yeah, no, it was a real trip. Like that cathedral. Oh, come on. Like this cathedral was just kitty corner from that modern building. I took a picture of that when we were in that plaza.
Yeah.
That was what was so cool, was that these things were just like right downtown. And that's what, you know, like in America, if something's 100 or 200 years old, like it's old and it's pioneer stuff, versus this stuff where it's like, wow, 500, 800, 1,000 years ago, it's just downtown. So here's your Nordstroms and your shopping district and restaurants and things. And then, oh yeah, there's just like a millennia old cathedral. And it's amazing. It's amazing.
Hey, man, I'll tell you what, like you can actually go to downtown Albuquerque, Old Town Albuquerque, and that's actually older than anything in the United States by a few hundred years. I mean, this is like one of the oldest settlements on the North American continent, you know. So it's fun to, you know, we think about this stuff, but there are structures. There's some Twitter account I started following. He's like some mound guy. He talks about, you know, all these mound builders that are all throughout North America. I think we talked about this on an early episode. And I think you were kind of pushing back on, well, I don't see
ancient civilization stuff, Graham Hancock and all that.
Yeah, but this is a different guy. It's a guy on Twitter. It's Mound something on Twitter. I could find it, but it'd be kind of boring to watch me try and find this account. But this guy talks about these massive mound complexes that are all over the United States that nobody's aware of. They just build shit on top of it. They're walking right over it every day, you know. So there have been people building shit and doing crazy shit on planet Earth for a long time. It's just we don't get to see most of it, because most of it, you know, fades or gets covered up, or, you know, something else comes along or somebody forgets about it, or they didn't write it down. So we don't know about it. We don't know what life was like in all the other places but the places that survived. And so to assign some sort of exceptionalism to the people that built XYZ structure over XYZ structure, I would point you to the Giza pyramids. And people go, oh my God, look at all this amazing architecture in Europe, and look at all the amazing things they did. Go look at those pyramids. Just go see them in person one time, and you'll be like, oh shit, that's some impressive shit. And that was at a time when it was a lot harder to do that kind of stuff than even because, you know, what a craftsman looked like back then is not quite the same as what a craftsman looks like today. But you can look at ancient Roman structures and go, wow, that's incredible. And they're still standing to this day. There's, you know, so it's really tough to kind of parse history. I think people just overestimate and have too many heuristics to really navigate what all of this stuff means, man. So that's why you should buy Bitcoin. That's seriously my thesis is like, of all of history, literally nobody on planet Earth can understand history, and all the complexities and nuance and everything that's occurred in the last 12,000 years. What I can say with absolute certainty, without any question in my mind, is that Bitcoin is different in that history, because there's never been anything like it, ever. Like there's never been a thing that you can own that someone can't take. And if you live in a society where that's a possible outcome, that's a game changer, right? Hunter-gatherers don't go around stealing shit from each other. It just doesn't happen. Agriculturalists do, because it's hard work and it's easier to steal than to work. And there's all kinds of incentives to take rather than build or contribute, right? But if you have something that can't be taken and you happen to live in a settled, fixed, agrarian-based society, then you go, hey, well, we got something new here. That's a unique trait. So, you know, to try and unpack and say, well, this is going to change money. I go, you don't know what money is, but does it change what you own? I go, yeah, 100%, like unquestionably. And I can show you there's nothing in history like it ever, because it hasn't existed. So this is a miracle of fiat that we arrived at a place where you can now own property. But all of that is built on fiat rails. Like the computers that they use to come up with the cypherpunks and, you know, all that kind of like encryption and cryptography and all that kind of stuff they're dealing with. They didn't just build those. They didn't go to a computer tree and pluck the computer off the computer tree. Like a bunch of fiat shit had to happen to make that thing happen. You see what I'm saying? So it's because of fiat that we have something that's unique in the world today. So to say fiat is like the, you know, root of all evil and yada yada yada, it's like it's the root of some evil and it's the root of some amazing shit too. So it's a big
bootstrapped. It has bootstrapped a good future world potentially.
Potentially, yeah.
And I think about, you know, the work and the power projection involved to, you know, going way back, and you could have a lot of interesting thoughts about the origins of it, how it even happened, how old it really is, the mounds, the pyramids, the Inca Trail, the size of these boulders that are laser cut, and all these things, to the cathedrals, and sort of like there was an effort to, variously, I think, to build something of permanence. Like this can't just be torn down very easily. This is hard to make. Once it's there, it stays. I mean, even like the rock rings in Britain or other things they built, like this was really damn hard to just do. And now that it's here, you can't just, like, you can roll them over, but how much work it takes to undo that. It's almost like a kind of like that, trying to create that immutability physical property just through sheer proof of work.
Yeah.
So there they stay.
It's proof of coercion is what that is.
Proof of coercion. Yeah. And it's amazing. So the cathedrals and all that, so like the things we were seeing are like a version of that, where it's like we're building something that it was hard to do. It's out of stone. It's got its permanence, and it projects symbolically a lot as well. So people like don't want to tear it down. If you wanted to, it's really hard to do. Now, World War II kind of did some of that just because of technology and bombs, but there were areas that were saved and preserved. There was a funny juxtaposition here. I was taking pictures. We went to Prague, and just the architecture was cool. And then there right on the corner is famous Louisiana chicken. And so,
oh yeah, baby.
That was another funny thing
that day. Yeah, right
there.
Like
there's an old chapel thing, and then right there at KFC, and it's sort of like El Salvador. Talking to people, it's like, oh, that's good food. We love it. It's popular. Yeah. The American brands everywhere. I kind of knew. I kind of knew that that American culture is popular in the world, you know, but it doesn't hit you until you're in every country you go to. Like Zurich, other than like there weren't like Hispanic people, it was quite diverse and American branded, and people speaking largely a lot of English. And you go to Vienna, more of the same. You go to Prague, more of the same. Slovakia, a little bit less, but then again, there's KFC or whatever, KFC,
yeah,
and McDonald's and all the things. And it's like, oh, where's the closest McDonald's? I want something that I understand, that's safe, and that you know what's going to be there.
Well, I would point out that KFC was full when I went in there to get a bucket.
Popular.
Exactly.
And so you see people walking around in all of these cities. It was like, this is surreal, because somebody's wearing like a Dodgers shirt or a New York Yankees hat or something that's like Brooklyn, New York. And this is pervasive. It's not like, oh, some people like American movies or American sports or American brands. It's more like everybody. Like if you're wearing that, and to an American, it could almost be kind of, I don't want to say kitschy or even like dated, like, oh, kind of from the 90s. But there it's like, no, this is cool.
Yeah.
This is America.
Yeah. I mean, I think it's gotten so pervasive that people don't even really notice it anymore. I mean, there's a Starbucks on every corner down there. There's, like I mean, we're a pervasive country, man, and people. I think people underestimate the United States. I think they assign it like some really odd values that are very, hard to pin down. Like, this is a very complex country that we operate in, we exist in, and we get a lot of benefits from being a complex sort of crazy experiment in agricultural fixed settlement living. But to say we should tear it all down and start over, I think is just like, well, I mean, if you want to kill half the people on the planet, go nuts. That's a good idea. And then you're probably going to find out that you ran into all the same problems that people have run into for the last 12,000 years. And then you'll end up with something that looks exactly like all the same shit that people have been trying for the last 12,000 years. Like the Soviets tried it. How'd that work out? I mean, if you're one of the 20 million people who starved to death because of that Soviet experiment, then you go, yeah, it was a good idea. And somehow communists will still say that to this day. They go, well, 20 million is a price to pay, so we could introduce this thing that failed catastrophically. Chinese tried it, and it seems to be working out better for them, but they also had, 10, 15 million people had to starve to death first to get that idea over the line. And then even there, they've now adopted this sort of pseudo market kind of ideology, and they're participating in the modern fiat systems and all that kind of stuff. So, it's kind of, I don't know, man, like people that want to reset things, I'm very dubious of.
Yeah. This castle that we didn't get to specifically, but it was in the background, like this backdrop of interest. And this bridge, the tower and the bridge here was 750 years old, and it's cool. You just walk across the bridge, and you imagine people doing that hundreds of years ago, crossing the bridge, like the Brooklyn Bridge. It's just amazing. Yeah. Anyway, it was a trip, man, and I had not been to Europe before. So as far as cultural experience, and then feeling as an American, the history, I guess, and then the American cultural export that's occurred. Everyone spoke English pretty much. I mean, it was crazy. And not like you hear those stories like in France, you try to speak English and they're like, It was just like people were almost like happy to practice it, or generously, oh yeah, no, we're like bilingual. We learn it. English is the language of global business, and it's permeating itself right into just
day-to-day interaction,
day-to-day language. I was in Zurich. I was at the airport, and there were a group of college kids bantering with each other. They're from Amsterdam. They're going to Amsterdam or coming from Amsterdam. They're Swedish, and they would just go back and forth from Swedish to English and back. Half the time they were just talking to each other in English, but they were Swedish and they were college kids. And it's just like, this is weird. Like they were just completely comfortable in English, and in fact, like English. It's easier sometimes. So.
Can be, yeah. I mean, but that's kind of the neat thing about history is it's not a settled thing. There's no epochs, there's no eras, there's no periods, there's no generations, none of that shit. It's just one unbroken line of time. So, people want to put things in buckets so they can understand them better, and they want to filter things through different lenses. But these changes have been ongoing for 12,000 years, and things like language and how that's going to permeate and how it's going to change. And, the English we speak right now is very different than the English that created Beowulf. Like if you try and read Beowulf in Old English, that's a chore. Like you're gonna struggle with it. You try and read Blackstone's Law and that was only 300 years ago. That's tough, man. Like that's hard. You got to do a lot of translating in your head of like, oh, that means S. That's not a N or whatever it is, right? So, but what you're seeing with the Swedes and what's going to happen with the Chinese and Hindi, and I mean, I think we're going to boil down to probably 3 major language groups in the world, and that's mostly because of the population speaking them. Spanish will probably stick around for a while. Arabic will probably stick around for a while, but I don't think you're going to see this plurality of languages persist for much longer, because it becomes harder and harder and harder to interface with the global monetary order when you're limited by the words you use, so.
Yeah. Speaking of language and hard hitting signal, there was, like I mentioned, Prague being pretty damn based in its approach to Bitcoin. There's, uh, Joe Bryan, is that who it is? Yeah. He did the video, and he's made other videos on what is the problem, and popular in Australia, but all over and stuff. And in his talk, he just people were hammering it right out there real hard, like you are being stolen from. The state is the abuser. The money is how they do it. The euro is going to zero. The pound is going to zero. The dollar is going to zero. And of course, Tony was there, and I can't really see this very well. Anyway, this was an awesome. Joe Bryan made this awesome flow chart of basically money debasement and its effects in our fiat lives, and corresponding to needing bigger government and bigger government, more spending, more control, and it just goes round and round and round and round. The death spiral, he called it. So that was a consistent vibe that I got out of Prague.
Yeah.
But I mean, it resonates with me, even as I know that the problem is just complicated. So the natural response to that would be like, smash this state. And it's like, well, you can take steps towards the entrance of the cave, but I don't know that the state can be smashed.
It can't.
Or it will maneuver to maintain its relevancy and control. Where that goes, nobody knows.
I mean, if you think of the state as like just naked power grabs, then yeah, it's an offensive idea and organization, right? But if you think of the state as something that is necessary to coordinate human beings in fixed, settled societies, then it becomes something that you can't live without. So, like, yes, the state can become abusive, and yes, the state can become permissive, but the state itself, the state form, is going to occur anywhere obligations have to be coordinated at scale, period, full stop. If you look at your own house, you don't just let your kids run around willy-nilly and do whatever they want, because it'd be a nightmare, right? You obligate them to do certain tasks around the house. You obligate them to cohere to social conventions and norms. So you are running a mini version of the state in your own house.
My household is a communist dictatorship.
Right, exactly. And if you go to work, it's a fascist organization, right? Like, you don't get to come in and tell your boss what you think should happen this week. He's going to tell you what you do, and you're going to do it. Full stop, period. So anywhere that you have to organize people, you're going to have these people that are doing the organizing, right? That's the nature of being organized. If you go join the Hazda tribe and you say, hey, I need you to go do something for me, that guy's going to look at you like you just sprouted a third eye, and he's going to laugh his ass off at you, make fun of you for about 20 minutes, and then he's going to wander off and do whatever he feels like doing, because he doesn't have any obligation to you. So you don't get the benefits of a fixed, settled society without the countervailing need for coordination, obligations to be coordinated, claims to be managed and facilitated throughout that society, whether it's a collective farm or a household or a municipality or a company or anything. Like, these things, they're just natural problems that occur when you try and coordinate human beings, and how you do that becomes very complicated very quickly, So I love the idea that people have, but I think they just underestimate what it is they're dealing with. It's almost like a childlike view of the world. They go, if we just fix this one thing, then everything's going to be great. But there's an old saying. It's like, for every complex problem, there is a very simple, there is a simple solution that is both elegant and wrong, because there is no simple solution to highly, deeply layered, complex systems, right? Like, you can't just come in and go, why don't they just fix Windows? If they would just fix this one thing, Windows would be great. If you knew and understood what Windows code is, you go, oh, you can't just do that. There's not just a simple thing we can just push a button and therefore now Windows is great, right? Like, it's an enormous undertaking just to get an operating system working correctly. So, and that's just one thing that they have full control over at all times. They can change that anytime they want with zero pushback. and it's a near impossible task for them to pull off, and they have unlimited resources to pull it off. So if you can't even fix a computer operating system, how do you think you're going to fix a global monetary order by a simple thing of just like, we'll smash the state, we'll start over? It's like, it's just not going to happen. The second you smash the state, you're going to have a bunch of warlords that are going to come in and impose obligations on you that you're definitely not going to like. They're going to be way more strict and way worse than what you had before. And the bigger likelihood is they're going to come kidnap all your kids and make them go work on the farm. So, you know, if you think that's the ideal outcome for smashing the state, I say go for it, you know, but you're going to run into the functional reality of human beings coordinating under pressure and constraint. Like, it's just unavoidable. So, so yeah, be based, buy Bitcoin, and try and navigate this world as best you can, because that's about the best you can hope for on any level. Like, you, unless you become a very powerful player, unless you become the state, you are subject to the state. Full stop. You know? Sovereign.
Yeah, I got my Bitcoin Way hat. The Bitcoin Way. Stay sovereign.
Yeah.
BTC Prague, their YouTube channel is steadily releasing the talks that they had there, and I'd just say at this point there's a few out. Well, I think they only have a few out, but they're all interesting. But Saylor's talk, knowing that it's Saylor and that he's looking at it from his view on it all, it's very interesting. I think it's an interesting talk to watch. Tony's is one to catch just to rekindle that fire. I loved Tony's talk just because it got me fired up. So, and he's got a great story. So if you hadn't seen the Tony talk or the Tony show, I mean, that it's worth catching just to be like, yes, this is why I Bitcoin. And then you look at Saylor and say, okay, now this is what powers that we are doing on, in and on Bitcoin for you to divest you of your Bitcoin while they offer you yield.
But see, that's not what Saylor's saying, dude. And that's kind of what I was getting when I was sitting in that audience. Is I was like, I think there's about 5 people in the entire room. There's probably 5,000 people sitting there. There's probably 5 people that actually heard the words he was saying and then understood what they meant. I think he's operating on a different level than most people are presuming. They presume they understand certain things, and then they impart that viewpoint onto what Saylor's saying. If you just listen to what he's saying, he's trying to explain to you that the world is more complicated than you think. And he's explaining things like, this is where money's coming from. This is what money is today. It's not, you know, going trading fucking sats for donuts. It's like coordinating, you know, pension funds and roadworks and major construction projects and airlines and supply chains and all. I mean, that the money is doing a lot of jobs. And it's got very little to do with the fact your tax rate went up and you got inflated a little more, so your milk's more expensive. Like, it's not like that. That may be a problem for you, but that's something the state expects you to just tolerate, and most people do. Like, you can just look around and see how many people are rising up in the streets to complain about prices. It's exactly zero. Out of a country of 270 million that it prides itself on individual liberty and freedom and revolution, there are 0 people protesting any of this stuff. They just get up, they go to work, they do what they're supposed to do, they follow the state rules, and then they play the state games, and then they, you know, take their state handouts and they operate in their state system, and they're more than happy to do it. And then they go home and they bitch about it while they're watching the football game, you know?
Yeah.
So I don't know, man.
I think, you know, the largest sounding protest, the voice, it sounds like, you know, we want the state to step in and do wealth transfer, steal from the rich or those greedy corporations and distribute it. We don't like being stolen from. We want you to steal from other people. And when I look at just sort of the outcome of what, so Saylor's spinning stuff up and others are as well. And so what is that outcome? It's like, well, those in the know that see the system for what it is are collecting as much Bitcoin as they can, and then offering products that expose people to that benefit. But that's where it's like, it's just important to tell people like we do, well, you're into Bitcoin, you understand Bitcoin, you like Bitcoin, take self-custody, get yours as you can now.
Yeah, you got a limited window, so enjoy that window while you can. But stay humble and stack sats, because I would wager that literally everybody on Bitcoin Twitter, probably all the folks watching this, like they just don't get or have a sound understanding of what this system really entails and what it requires. What they should universally be on board with is your ability to exclude others from your Bitcoin property right. Like that's a big deal. And then I struggle every week to try and come up with a framing or an analogy to make that coherent, make it impactful. And I can't come up with it because people are still hung up on like, well, it's money, it's sound money. We're going to fix the blah, 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 whatever. I go, man, like we don't know enough about Bitcoin to understand where it's going to be in 5 years, let alone 10 years, like zero. There's no human being on planet Earth that has this thing figured out and knows what it is. There is at least one human being, this guy right here, that goes, I can tell you this much from everything I've seen, everything I've read, everything I've learned, that having that property right is a major, big deal game changer. And it only works if you take self-custody. It only works if you support the network. And even if you don't support the network, I think the network's probably going to be fine, most likely, but it's a vulnerable spot right now. Like the lack of nodes is kind of problematic. So something that everybody on planet Earth that owns Bitcoin could very easily fix just by spinning up a start 9. But other than that, if you're not going to do that, at least have sats in self-custody that you can move around and that no one can take from you. And that means cold storage and air-gapped wallets and et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Bitcoin Way are great people at teaching you how to do that. But if you're looking at all the fiat shenanigans that are being built on top of it, that what Saylor's talking about building is incorporating more capital to bring capital into Bitcoin. That's it. He's talking about creating financial products that are going to make him a boatload of fiat dollars, and it's going to make it integrate better with the legacy financial system. Like your ability to displace the money market fund world with a Bitcoin-backed instrument is a major significant transfer of fiat capital from a $400 trillion pile of money that is going into CDs that pay 4% over a 6-month window or whatever into Bitcoin-backed CDs that pay 11% over a 6-month window or a 1-year window. It's stuff like my mom can use and wants to use because she doesn't understand self-custody. She barely understands how to check her email. So me forcing her into some sort of self-custody scenario is like, I may as well just ask her to start flapping her wings and flying. It's just not going to happen. But if she finds out she can get a reasonably stable rate of return at 10%, on her fiat savings every month or whatever, she's going for it. If she can go down to her bank and go, hey, I can buy this money market thing. They pay 8%. The bank owns a bunch of stretch that's doing 11%. So they get margin off the stretch. They pass that margin on to their customers. And my mom gets to walk into her bank branch and go, I'd like to open a CD for $10,000, please. And I want that 8% interest because that looks super juicy to me.
It's better than 3%.
Yeah, this is better than 3%. She has no idea, right? Like I did the math for her. I said, hey, you own a rental property, Mom, here. If on the same day you bought that rental property, you put all that money into Bitcoin, you'd be worth $28 million right now. She goes, nah, I don't care. I'm like, it's like, okay, so you were more than happy to take the, whatever 10% rate of return that you got on that investment from rent and whatnot, but you would forego 28 million just for doing something like just pushing the buy button, right? And it's just like, it's too simple, It's so simple that it doesn't seem real, so therefore it's not real because she can't buy it at the credit union. That's the market that Saylor is trying to address. I don't think he's talking to Bitcoiners at all. I think he's trying to explain to Bitcoiners like, hey, dude, there's a big complex world out there and all that money is seized and it's seized in a fiat system. If you want to get that money flowing into Bitcoin, it's not going to be enough to buy your hamburgers with it. He said that trade thing is worth about $800 billion. There's 400 trillion stranded in money market funds. There's 400 trillion stranded in real estate. There's 400 trillion stranded in stocks. He's like, that's the money you want flowing into Bitcoin. And that's what he's saying. That's how it helps Bitcoin. All that money starts flowing towards us. That helps Bitcoin. That helps you, the pleb. If you're holding Bitcoin in self-custody, you get all the benefits of all that capital flowing into that asset. But if that's not flowing in, if it's just a bunch of people screaming at each other on Twitter about which version of fucking node software you're running, so you can go buy ice cream cones with sats and get paid in sats for your, whatever trivial labor task you're performing. I go, well, you're going to keep Bitcoin at this little tiny itty bitty thing that most of the planet isn't going to use or care about. So if that's what you want Bitcoin to be, well, that's fine too. I mean, but you don't have a say in the matter. You don't get to direct how people use their Bitcoin, what they're going to build with it, how they're going to try and implement it, what they're going to, if you really want to have a say, spin up a node.
Yeah. And it was interesting during Saylor's talk, the intimate, smaller one, he, they went to questions from the audience. It's funny because Julian here with Relay, he was the moderator, and I think he asked like 3 questions in the course of an hour and 15 minutes. And, question 1, and Saylor would go on for 20 minutes. And then question 2, and then Saylor goes on a thing for 20 minutes. And it's amazing to just stream that into your brain as he goes. That was fascinating. But then they go to questions from the audience, and they got like 2 or 3 in, I think. And one of them was interesting. It was like, what do you say to people that say that strategy is a risk to Bitcoin or something like that? Basically like that, that creating risk for Bitcoin by, all the games, rehypothecation, the derivatives, all these things, and that Bitcoin's core principles are, different. Saylor's argument was that they are protecting Bitcoin. And so he mentioned it. I heard it elsewhere. We talked about it a bit and I get what he's saying, because if you're grappling with this deep state monster or the state, and like, you're not going to pierce that, although you can grow roots into it. And like you said, all the money that could flow to Bitcoin, once that, and the fix is sort of in. So once these laws are in, these, between the ETFs and the approvals and the regulations, and this stuff is getting in now, and then now there's money in it. It's not just law, like, oh, they could change a law. Once there's all this money in it, they cannot back that out. There's too much interest and money and power players that are intractably in and benefiting. They can't reverse that. Like, right. The fix is in. Yeah. So it's not about the how based you are, how the philosophy of it, or the intentions and the brighter world. It's just pure money. It's just money. And so it's like there's no backing that train up.
Right. Well, I mean, whether or not Saylor's actually protecting Bitcoin or not, I kind of go, like miners are protecting Bitcoin, nodes are protecting Bitcoin, electricity is protecting Bitcoin. What Saylor's talking about is regulatory capture and rules.
Yeah,
and
regulatory.
Like all the stuff that makes the fiat system go. But in terms of like, if there's a bunch of capital flowing in, the more capital that flows in, the less likely the governments, as you just pointed out, I think very well. If there's, $20 trillion worth of wealth locked up in Bitcoin related things, and then some senator like Elizabeth Warren just decides to get a new feather in her bonnet and start trying to pass some law that restricts XYZ or something like that, and is interfering with BlackRock's game and Saylor's game and Fidelity's game, I think she's going to run into a great big fat stone wall, and it's going to be, like, it's just not going to happen anymore, right? But if Bitcoin is floating around as some $200 trillion plaything or $200 billion plaything for a bunch of computer nerds, like, they can shut that down anytime. Like, it's not, I mean, they can't really shut it down.
Make it hard in terms of,
they can make it a real pain in the ass for you to interface with it, especially if you live in a jurisdiction with, deep surveillance like the United States or China or European Union or something like that. So I get what he's saying on that regard, but ultimately it's like, it's up to us as the plebs, as the handful of people on planet Earth that have kind of understood Bitcoin on a deeper level, and just go, look, man, this is all neat. It's all fun that someone's going to come in and tinker with it, make it harder to capture from the state perspective. But the thing that makes it valuable for them is the same thing that makes it valuable for you. It's decentralized, it's permissionless, it's secure. So as long as we preserve those aspects of it, and because you can transact with anybody on the Bitcoin network. You don't need to ask permission. You don't need to go to Kraken to get your Bitcoin. You can find Bitcoin other ways. And as long as you can continue to do that, then Bitcoin's going to do what Bitcoin does. And none of us on planet Earth is qualified to say what that's going to look like. But I am placing a very large wager, personal wager, that it's going to be transformative. It's going to be game changing. It's going to be different. I think it's going to be better for everybody on planet Earth, ultimately. But how we get there and why, I think, is the unsettled question. Anybody that says they know, I go, maybe you do, but probably not, is my thesis right now.
Yep, totally agreed. And it was interesting to basically hear that directly in his own words from Saylor and Adam Back and others, that if all I saw was certain Twitter feed stuff where they troll on them or they're like, disagreeing over aspects or angles of it, or framing what Saylor's doing simply from the fiat world and that he's compromised or a bad actor and all that, from a certain frame, like I can see that, but then I hear it directly from his mouth in all of his rantings, just the deep, crazy conviction he has that Bitcoin is ushering a golden era, Bitcoin to easily 1 million, but there's no top. He is still so convicted on Bitcoin. Yes, he's doing all this other vibe coded stuff on the side or to his core now. But to judge that too harshly, his deepest values still are very just absolutely pro Bitcoin for all of its properties and how it's going to change the world. And he's just interfacing with the TradFi system and the governance we have. Similar with Adam Back, he's doing similar things, and he uses terminology, TradFi words and stuff that is kind of like, I'm not into that, but he also gets a big picture to it all. So when you hear Saylor just saying Bitcoin to 1 million and beyond, it's like, yeah, wow, translating it to a fiat world, he is deeply convicted. He is core Bitcoin all the way. And so hearing that is just a reminder, like all the TradFi gamery aside, they're there for these fundamental reasons that we share. So
yeah, hopefully. I mean, we don't know Saylor, right? So
I guess you can't really know. He can say stuff, but
he can say whatever
you believe it when he says it. It's like, wow, he's still so laser focused, like intense on Bitcoin. So
well, it's made him a billionaire, right? I mean, like,
I guess he's been benefiting from it.
Yeah. Well, I mean, but he's so far out in front. But one of the interesting things he said in that little upstairs conversation was like, look, man, if you go invent a thing that everybody gets as soon as you do it and it makes perfect sense and it starts becoming successful, like 4,000 people are going to come copy you and do it better than you within 10 minutes. Right. He said that's a tough product to make.
They're at your heels competing with you immediately.
Constantly. Yeah. Like without a doubt. So guys like Elon Musk, he comes in and goes, I'm going to do an impossible task that everyone goes, this is impossible. You're a moron. You're crazy. You're an idiot. You can't do that, blah, 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 blah. And then he does it. And now he's so far ahead of the game and no one's going to catch him, right? Strategy, Saylor, same thesis. He goes, I got this idea for Bitcoin-backed XYZ things. And people go, that's crazy. You're a moron. It's going to be, here's all the FUD, and all the reasons why it won't work, and you're stupid. The beauty of that approach is nobody's copying you, because they all think you're a moron. So when it takes off the way it does, and the point he brought up was like, look, man, some mainstream media thing said, oh, this guy just lost $16 billion. He's like, they didn't think to mention that we made 80 billion so we could lose 16 billion. Like nobody talked about that.
Right.
They just focused on the fact we lost 16 billion. But anybody that thinks about it for a second go, well, fuck, you must have made a lot of money if you could afford to lose 16 billion. You're still standing there on CNBC talking about how great your company is. So obviously you didn't lose 16 billion and you're in the hole and you're, begging on the corner of Fifth Avenue and Broadway or whatever. Right. So, but that's kind of the, like the same thing that's driving the motivation of that guy to stack as much Bitcoin as he can is the same motivation you should have. This is a unique instrument. It hasn't existed before in history. It's a fundamentally transformative property right that no king, pharaoh, anybody has ever enjoyed before. And we don't know what that means. So go buy some and sit on it and be happy that you got here when you did, because the rest of it is going to be politics and noise. Everything you read on Twitter is politics and noise. There's not a single technical thing worth talking about on Twitter anywhere from any camp. They're all just playing politics, and it's the politics of attention mostly. So just, steer away from that shit, stay away from it. It's all toxic fucking nonsense. Stay humble, stack sats, run a fucking node, take self-custody. It's not rocket science. And then wait and see what happens,
Yeah. And I got this book from Luke DeWolf, Defending Bitcoin.
Oh, yeah. I started reading it. It's pretty good.
Great guy to chat with. I just started it and looking forward to learning something here. But yeah, you'll find it fairly early on. It's The history of money, a brief history of money, properties of money, scarcity. Um, it's the legacy view on it, the coincidence of wants, the medium of exchange, how money came to be. So
Yeah.
it's interesting. I'm hoping to get into it further to learn more about hopefully the tech and the landscape of how we defend Bitcoin. But yeah, even very enlightened minds still are grappling with what is money, honestly. So
Well, they heard an idea that they agreed with, and now they've, hitched their pony to it, right? But that doesn't necessarily make it right. And there are no, I mean, this is a contested field. When people talk about money, it's not everyone agrees. If you go mention to like a chartalist, like an MMT guy, and say, yeah, just mention Menger, Austrian economics, that guy's going to laugh at you endlessly. And he's going to have a lot of really good reasons why he thinks you're a moron. And if you go talk to a credit guy like David Graeber, if you're going to rest in peace, or someone that's influenced by his line of work, and then you start parroting Austrian economics or the double coincidence of wants, they're going to laugh at you and mock you endlessly because they have a whole base of evidence that they can point to and go, show me where this magical barter economy ever emerged in the history of the world. Because we can't find it fucking anywhere. You'd think that would show up somewhere. You'd think we'd find it, so there's no proof that that's ever existed. Doesn't mean it didn't, just so right out of the gate, if you're hitching your pony to an idea that is deeply contested, not necessarily agreed upon, and there are people with reasoned, thoughtful arguments against it, you might want to consider your core thesis. That's my total argument about all of this stuff. But what I can say, and what I don't think anybody can reasonably dispute, is that a property right that is immune from sovereign capture is unprecedented. So that's an important thing to focus on, which is why I do it all the time. So I don't know, man, but we'll see what happens. But when I see those takes, it's like Safadine all over again. I just go, dude, but that's an opinion. That's not a fact. And it's dangerous to conflate the two.
Yeah, not to get into it, but so in the book here, any medium of exchange can be rendered ineffective by sudden inflation. Cowrie shells in Africa were inflated when Europeans brought more shells in from abroad, collapsing local markets for them. Similarly, European, I would say German traders arrived at Yap and brought modern tools that made it far easier to quarry and transport rice stones from neighboring islands, flooding the market with new stones and devaluing the existing supply. So you get into that hard in your book, which
yeah,
we're looking forward to its release.
Good God.
This year.
Waiting. It's driving me crazy. It's everything I can do, not just sit here and refresh my inbox from Monday through Friday and just go, have you said anything yet? Have you said anything?
Hello, where are you?
The thing is, I know how that world works. I know reviewers are terrible. They're always late. It takes forever to navigate these things. She's probably got another 50 projects on the back burner somewhere, or on the front burner, or just other shit, and fiat life and meetings and book fairs and all the crap that goes into being an acquisitions editor or major publication. So I'm trying to just not bug her and just let her do her thing, let this thing kind of play out. However it's going to play out, it's going to play out, and I'll just sit here and just wait, But it is difficult because it's like, I got a lot of hopes and dreams are sort of pinned on this outcome, and and there still remains a very significant, not impossible risk that they come back and go, we can't really publish this. Sorry, GFY, dude. And I'll be like, boo-hoo, a little sad panda for a while, but but kind of move on from there, I guess, right?
Well, I think there's a inevitable publishing outcome. What direction that takes, we'll find out. But it's certainly this year.
Yeah. Well, one of the neat things about the conference is I actually got to sit down and talk to Jeff Booth, and we're talking about having a little discussion about the origins of money at some point. And so he's a super gracious guy. I'm like a huge fan of Jeff Booth. I obviously he thinks things about money that I kind of go, I don't know if that's quite right or not. But regardless of that, I think that guy is a good actor in the space. I think he's a thoughtful, conscientious, really kind, really generous person, and I'm just thrilled that I even got a chance to sit down and chat with him at all, let alone, start working out a potential discussion later on down the road about, money, monetary systems, things like that. But And that was, a lot of that groundwork was laid by Michael Jordan over at the Bitcoin Way, and a huge gratitude to that entire team. And they're amazing human beings, and just, I love their mission. I love what they're doing for people. I love how they're helping people. And even if we disagree on the details about, what money is, what their core mission, their core ideology, I'm 100% on board with, so it's just great interfacing with those kind of people. And, Luke DeWolf was an amazing guy. I got to chat with him a lot at our dinner with the Bitcoin Way. And, Nat Bernal was there. And I don't think I said 2 words to her, but I got to chat with Efrat a little bit. She was sat right next to me. And, and Chris from Cedar, and just, George Bodine was there. He's a pretty neat guy. Man. Well, that was one of the neatest things is like, if you look at that lineup, the people that Robin interviewed were Jeff Booth, George Bodine, and me. I'm like, holy cow, dude! Like, I'm in rare air here. You know what I mean? Like, that's a pretty. It's super generous of Robin. He's such an amazing guy, and he was such an amazing host for us in Austria. But just kind of putting me in that same sphere, I was like, I felt very honored. So those are some great guys and some great personalities. And even though George Bodine screwed me up when I was trying to put that coin on the cap, he bumped me. He did that.
Yeah.
I think I was on camera, but
right.
I mean, he's the most interesting man alive. And, he's just a fascinating person to talk to. And, anyway, that's enough of me just trying to be gracious to the amazing.
Yeah. Just sitting at the table with Jimmy Song, Knut Sandholm, and others. I mean, I can't name them all, but it was like, damn, wow. Yeah. And good actors. Like, we may disagree on things here and there about whatever, and we don't know the future, but we're all there for a core fundamental good reason. And to connect on that it's enlightening and motivating. But
it's good for the soul. It's food for the soul, 100%.
Yeah. Can't hardly begin to describe all the things, but we did our best here today, covered some things.
And I nattered on endlessly about money. I'll try not to do that next week. I don't know. Anyway, should we wrap it up?
Yep. Been a good talk. Until next time, everybody. Oh, let me remind people that we make a self-custody storage device, and you should take self-custody. As a Bitcoiner, you know that taking self-custody is critically important. But if you've ever had a seed phrase, you've probably had it written down on something kind of like this. You can hide it or secure it, but paper burns, paper fades, paper gets wet, paper rots, paper blows in the wind. Paper has things written on it that might look important. So get off paper and get yourself a MicroSeed at microseed.io. Get the kit and crank out all the keys you'll ever need forever.